Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Got Mental Health Podcast. I am your co-host, Rachel Cove. I am a multi-passionate entrepreneur, author, artist, mother, and certified recovery coach.
I'm your co-host, Arthur Mogilevsky, entrepreneur, girl dad, animal activist, and owner of AM Healthcare, a premier substance abuse and mental health treatment program.
With the collective experience of 21 years working in the mental health field, we are excited to bring to you a safe and fun place to talk all things mental health.
We will be interviewing experts, thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and professionals in the entertainment industry to better educate, inform, and inspire our community to have positive mental wealth.
Welcome back to the Got Mental Health Podcast. I am your co-host, Rachel Cove, and I am the only co-host in the studio today. My co-host, Arthur, was not able to make it today. In the Zoom studio, we have Richard Dixey, PhD, who is the author of 3 Minutes a Day, a 14-week course to learn meditation and transform your life, and a senior faculty member at Dharma College in Berkeley, California. A research scientist and a lifelong student of Buddhism who holds advanced degrees in biophysics and the history and philosophy of science, Dixey directed a bioelectronic research unit at a London hospital before becoming CEO of his own biotech company. He moved to the U.S. in 2007 to devote himself to teaching meditation, deepening his own practice, and running the Light of Buddha Dharma Foundation in India with his wife Wang Mo, the eldest daughter of the well-known Tibetan Tarhang Tulku. For more information, visit him online at www.richarddixey.com. Hi, Richard.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, and I apologize if I did not say any of those names correctly.
No problem. Tarhang Tulku.
Tarhang Tulku.
Yeah, TT. Yeah.
Beautiful. Richard, I feel like I'm talking to someone who I wish I was speaking with 16 years ago because I've been an avid meditator for going on 17 years. I have been actively meditating almost daily. And I feel like when I started meditating 16 years ago, I had no idea what I was doing, right? I didn't have any guidelines. I remember I was very outspoken. I was very energized. I couldn't stop talking. I couldn't sit still. And I remember driving in the car with someone, and someone looked at me and she's like, you should really try meditating. And for someone who wasn't capable of not talking, I looked at her and I said, you're crazy. I'm never going to be able to meditate. So now, having been meditating for 16 years, I can't live without it. I can't live without it. So I just want to say thank you for writing this book, 3 Minutes a Day, a 14-week course to learn meditation and transform your life. What led you to write this book?
Actually, in many ways, it's experiences like I'm having now. Meditation is a life skill that should be taught in primary school along with reading and writing. It should be reading, writing, and meditation. And it's so fundamental to a life well lived. The trouble is, most of the meditation teachings, which were developed in Asia for monastics, have come to us in that form. And as a result, they stress very long periods of meditation, often with lots of complicated terms in other languages. And I'm always very saddened when I hear someone say something like, oh, I tried to meditate, but it wasn't for me. It's like saying, I tried to read, but it wasn't for me. And you go, no, actually, you just didn't have a chance to approach meditation in the right way. And so the book came about by my attempt to translate a really long experience of meditation into something which is really digestible for people in contemporary culture. And by contemporary culture, I literally mean worldwide, but educated in modernity, which is not a monastic culture, and we don't have hours and hours to do things, and also embedding it within an understanding of cognition in a modern way. So to me, meditation is really basic. And, I always say to people, it's a bit like, what does chocolate taste like? And I could tell you chocolate's brown and sweet and sticky, but I would never, ever, ever be able to give you the taste of chocolate unless I gave you a piece of chocolate And then you go, oh, that's what chocolate tastes like. Well, I've tried to do that in this book. I've tried to set out the fundamental elements that develop into a meditation practice in a very, very easy way to enable people to get the taste of meditation. And like you, once you've got the taste of meditation, you get it. Then you can do what you like with it. Obviously, there's lots of things you can do with meditation, but you've got to get the taste of it. And because it's an internal state, you can't point to it and say it's like this, because it's not like anything. It's an internal state. You have to give people experiences. And then when they've got those experiences down, they get meditation. And that's what I did when I tried to write this book.
You did a beautiful job. How do you define meditation?
Oh, that's pretty simple. All we experience and all we ever can experience and all we ever have experienced and all we ever will experience are our five senses and our thoughts and imagination. 6 things, 6 channels, like 6 gates. And normally what we do is we infer from what arises in those 6 gates a world which in school we're taught is real. The problem is that's an inference. The actual experience we have is one of the 6 gates. So meditation is learning to address our attention directly to the 6 gates, rather than using what we infer from the 6 gates to model experience, which is what we do moment to moment. So meditation is looking at experience itself. And that's the fundamental life skill. That's why I say it's along with reading and writing. It is so fundamental to who we are as beings, what it means to be a human being, that it ought to be absolutely taught to everyone. And the trouble is, what we infer from our 6 gates is colored by our ideas, by our bad experiences, by our good experiences, by our background, by our education, by our friends, by our religion. A huge number of things color the map we make of our experience, that inference I was talking about. And we don't see that. We just see a world, and we think the world we see is, quote, real. But the world we see is colored up unconsciously by us. And many of the things that we suffer from, we make ourselves. We actually make the things that make us suffer. So meditation is learning to cut through that, to see actuality, which is the inputs of the 5 senses and the gate of the mind themselves. And then from there, develop insight. And so it's a very, very basic skill. And as I say, if we were born with an instruction manual, like working the VCR or something, if we were born with an instruction manual, this would be chapter 1. Chapter 1, I say, by the way, you're in a 6-channel parallel processor. That's where you are. And this is what you should do. You should look at the 6 channels themselves before you get ideas about them. Then when you get ideas about them, you realize you're having ideas about the 6 channels rather than thinking your ideas are real, because your ideas aren't, they're inferences. And that's true even of the strongest ideas we might have. Scientific statements about black holes and all this stuff are still inferences. They're not real in the proper sense of the term. And this distinction is so fundamental to living a good life, living properly, really getting to grips with opinion. And now there's another thing, and this is modernity. Modernity has put into our hands these things, these mobile phones, and they're little computers, and they're designed to capture our attention and sell us things, basically. And so people's autonomy has been captured by technologies which are dragging them out of themselves the whole time, something we can talk about. And that makes people very stressed. So the level of stress is going up and up and up and up and up. And people are feeling disconnected from their lives. And this is because the technology we're in and the rapid change, environmental and social and political change that's happening, is causing this outbreak of stress and meaninglessness. And this, again, can all be addressed by a single life skill, meditation.
Wow. I mean, if that was the podcast right there, like if that was just the end of it, I learned so much just from what you just said right there. So I would like to pick apart a little bit of the things that you just said. Could you, and I don't know if I'm going to say it correctly, could you define inference?
Oh, yeah, sure. Inference, yeah. Let's talk about inference.
Yeah, let's do that.
So the famous example of inference is there is smoke, therefore there is fire. I can't see the fire, I can only see the smoke. But nearly always when there's smoke, there's fire. Therefore, I think there's a fire out there. That's called an inference. I don't directly see the fire. I don't directly experience the fire, but I reckon there must be a fire because I see smoke. Now, when you look at how we grow up as children, what children do is they make a map of the world. I remember walking with my daughter when she was small, about 4, and we used to walk, we lived in London then, and we used to walk past cars and she would point the colors, blue car, red car, etc. She had a terribly difficult time distinguishing white cars from silver cars. And I remember going out with her for at least 2 or 3 weeks with her going, is that a white car? Is that a silver car? Until eventually she got it and she could tell the difference between white and silver. Now, this is all populating a map of inferences because that name, white or silver, is an inferential name. We're saying, oh, I know what one of those is. It's that. It's a car. It's a whatever. But of course, that's just a guess. It's a very good guess. I'm not suggesting it's a wrong guess, but it is a guess. Now, the problem is, if you look at the map in which we live, it's not just a map of names. It's a map of, I want one of those. I don't want one of those. I'd like that. I wouldn't like that. This is good for me. This is bad for me. It's full of all these injunctions. Where have these injunctions come from? They've come from advertisers. Either it's advertisers wanting you to buy things, or it's teachers telling you not to do things, or it's bad experiences you've had that say, don't do that. We're full of injunctions. All of that injunctiveness, all of those orders we're given by our map boss us around. So we land up feeling disempowered. We feel exhausted by the end of the day. We've been bossed around so much by our maps that we don't get any rest. So what meditation does is disconnect the map. And what we find is what you could call natural intelligence. We are naturally intelligent beings. Our natural intelligence is bewitched, embroiled, mixed up with all this injunctive map making. It's exhausting. Learning to disconnect the map is literally the skill of meditation. That's what meditation is. If you want to disconnect the map for 6 hours, by all means, meditate for 6 hours. But actually, you can disconnect the map in 3 minutes. You really can. And just disconnecting the map for that little bit of time has a big impact because the map we're in is pushing us around like a big brother, shoving us around. And so learning how to say, look, enough. I want a bit of time out. It's not going to sleep. It's just time without the map. In that moment of clarity, where there's no map pushing you around, you can have intuitions. You can have creativity. You can see things another way. There are so many things that happen when the map stops. So, they always say life is what happens when you're planning other things. The plan is the map. That's what's driving you around. And so most of us live lives of tremendous pressure. Where's the pressure coming from? From our own map making. And when you get a mobile phone with all the social media on it, sorry, I can't get anything. Yeah, the social media on it, it's reinforcing map making. It's reinforcing self-identity, which is quite literally a map reference. Who do people think I am? What do other people think of me? Am I doing well or badly? Am I beautiful or not? All these sorts of questions are not real. They're inferences. So this is a fundamental skill. And to me, so many of the problems that we suffer from come from our inability to disengage in this fundamental way. And this disengagement is initially difficult because we suffer from what is called reflexive reactivity. We are reacting to the map reflexively. And so we find ourselves being upset or being enticed or being worried or being whatever by all this stuff coming towards us. So we have to learn to disengage our attention. And this is the fundamental skill that you learn as a beginning meditator, is how do I disengage? Not to remain disengaged, because ultimately we want to be responsive, not reactive. So it's not to become disengaged and live in a box, with your eyes closed, but how do we learn initially to disengage? So when we re-engage, we do so in our own way. We've taken back our autonomy. We have become ourselves for real instead of copying everything else that we get from a map. And so this is why meditation makes you emotionally resilient. People who meditate can deal with stress much, much better because they don't take the stress reactively. Oh, I've got to fix this. I must do this. They're not doing that. They're saying, okay, I got a problem. I need to respond to the problem, but I've got time. I don't get pushed into responding to it. And this knee-jerk reactivity is part of the problem of modernity. It's getting worse and worse as our technology gets more sophisticated.
I completely agree. And I think those two words, responding and reacting, are very different. And yet I don't think people realize how different they are. So could you share what the difference is between responding and reacting?
Absolutely. So a reflex, classically, the doctor hits your knee and it goes doink like that, is automatic. Doink. Now, if we live in a map and the map has got pre-cooked ideas of what I like, what I don't like, what's good, what's bad, and we live with that, we will just reflexively go towards what we like and avoid what we don't like. We don't have any choice in the matter. It's almost programmed in. And advertisers are trying to do that. What advertisers are trying to do is make such a strong association between something and its value that you reflexively go towards it. That's the idea of advertising. Now, responding is quite different. A response is considered. You might go, well, it's attractive, but do I want it? Or you might think, this is bad, but how bad is it? That ability to take a bit of time is totally different from a reaction. So reactivity is unconscious. Responsiveness is conscious. We've got back our autonomy. Now, there's something very, very important here, and it's to do with concentration. Now, meditation is about the ability to control our concentration, or more properly, to inhabit our concentration. Now, concentration comes in two different flavors, and this is the key, I think, to successful meditation. So this reactivity that I've been talking about stirs us up. So most people are in a state of turmoil. By the end of the day, they're ready to sleep. And ironically enough, if you measure the brain between waking and sleeping, most people are dreaming so frenetically at night, you can't actually see any difference in metabolic activity between someone who's awake and someone who's asleep. They're literally going 24/7, churning away in all of this reactivity. So the first step is to calm. It's called shamatha. Now, calmness is literally the same as taking your churned up glass of water or whatever it is, putting it on a shelf. And what happens is it settles. As the dust settles and the water settles, we start seeing clearly. And that seeing clearly is quite literally vipassana. Passana is seeing and V is clear, clear seeing. We start seeing our life clearly, often really for the first time. Now, the key is, how do we get calm? That means, how do we stop reflexive reactivity? And this is where concentration comes in. So most of us, everybody who's been educated in a contemporary manner has been taught to concentrate. Concentrate, mother sort of like, Johnny, concentrate. And we learn to close down all those six gates to one and concentrate. Normally it's the visual sense. We're really concentrating on something. That actual term for that concentration is adverting. We advert our concentration, which is exactly where the word advertising comes from, because it's designed to capture our concentration and make us look. That's what an advertisement does. It captures your concentration. Now, adverting is brittle. So all beginning meditators suffer from their attempt to advert their concentration onto a given object and hold it there. You might be able to do it for a moment, but there's a sound, a car door slams, someone talks behind you, you get a thought in your head, and immediately your concentration's darting away to some other topic. And often people who say, I tried to meditate, but it wasn't for me, are people for whom that made them give up. They couldn't see a way of overcoming that obstacle. And then you hear people saying, oh yeah, meditation's about stopping thoughts. Utter nonsense, completely mistaken. And this is because they've only got adverting. So they think, well, if I stop thinking, I'll be able to advert perfectly because there'll be nothing to disturb me. So they go into a very quiet room with no light and sit there with their eyes closed and hope nothing will happen. This is a misunderstanding. And it's for this reason. There are two phases to concentration. There's adverting and there's savoring. Now, savoring is totally different from adverting. And one of the major tasks of becoming calm is learning how to savor our experience. Now, a good metaphor for this is you pick up a cup of coffee, put it to your lips, adverting. Savor the taste, feel the coffee taste, savoring, different form of concentration. So one of the things we do in the 3-minute approach is having introduced people to adverting by watching a candle. We then shift to another one of the gates, the hearing, and we listen to a fading bell. And the idea is to train our concentration on a fading object. And if we do that successfully, and over a few days, you can do it, you land up concentrated in the experience of being with nothing. You're just savoring concentration. That kind of concentration isn't brittle. If a car door slams, it's just part of the savoring. You're no longer jittery. This builds into a powerful faculty of mind. And the strange thing is, 3 minutes is a long time. Actually, if you sit with a 3-minute timer and watch a candle, you're going to be going, gee, it's going a long time. Is it over yet? It's not like it's a short time, but it's enough time to develop these skills. And I actually have an app, a free app that goes with the book, it goes on people's mobile phones to encourage them to do this anywhere. Because the other thing I really object to is the assumption that you can only meditate sitting cross-legged on a cushion in front of some holy image. That is a complete misunderstanding of this basic life skill. The best place to meditate where you are right now, because that's where you're getting distracted. That's where you're getting tense. That's where you're losing your autonomy. If you can get a meditation practice you can do right now, it's going to be useful to you. So again, the whole idea is to develop simple, short techniques that you can use now.
I love that.
It's the people who take time out of their day and do just that.
Sorry to interrupt you. I'm working on it right now. It's interesting that you said people think that you have to sit cross-legged, as I'm doing right now, and totally unconsciously, right, in order to meditate. And I'm very passionate about martial arts. And recently, or in this last couple of years, one of the books I read was a book that Bruce Lee's daughter wrote. I can't remember the name of it right now.
Okay.
But she talks about how her father, Bruce Lee, wasn't a meditator that sat still, but that when he ran, he said, that's when I'm meditating, is when I'm running.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what you think about that, because then I have other people that say, well, I don't meditate sitting down and listening to a guided meditation, but when I go on a walk outside in nature, I feel like I'm meditating. Yeah. What do you think the difference is between sitting still and disengaging and going internal type meditation versus movement type meditation?
So there are two bits to the answer. The first is people associate meditation with this guy, the Buddha. And we always get the Buddha meditating. Actually, the Buddha didn't meditate much. He really didn't. The records of his life have him walking around, teaching people. He almost never meditated. I wish there were statues of the Buddha doing his teeth, eating lunch. There's no reason to be like this. This is an image that is misguiding people as to what meditation is. It's a beautiful image. I'm not suggesting Buddhas aren't lovely things, but the idea that Buddha just meditated is a misunderstanding. So what are we talking about when we talk about meditation? Okay, we are making a map of the world, moment to moment to moment. And when I say moment to moment to moment, it's approximately 20 times a second. We're making a map.
What?
I tell you why we know that. You know, when you watch movies, you can't see the frames changing. If you slow the frame rate down enough, suddenly you get click, 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 click. You can see the frames changing. The speed at which you start seeing the frame change is around 20 times a second. That means that we have a frame changer going on in our heads, going faster than 20 times a second. That's why when you slow it down, you start seeing it. That's an amazing thought.
Wow.
Mapping at 20 hertz. So this is a reflexive process to, quote, know the world. Now, what meditation is about is disconnecting the map maker and getting to the sense base just for a moment. And you can measure this map maker in lots of ways, by the way. There's some references to that in this book as to how you can see this. And now, if you disconnect the world and you're just in experience, you are undoubtedly meditating. So someone who goes walking in the fields, if that's what they're really doing, and they're not daydreaming, they're actually engaging, are certainly doing that. I'll give you another example. Sportsmen who enter the zone, and suddenly you're like watching the TV and there's some guy in a complete zone playing tennis or something, basketball. When that's happening, they're in a meditative state. They are totally engaged with what they're doing. Or an actor, when they totally take on the role, or any performer. It's one of the reasons why modernity so worships performers. Now, the majority of martial arts were developed by Buddhist monks, as you probably know. They come from itinerant monks, and they all base themselves in this concentration, so there's perfect responsiveness. That's really what the martial art is about, being perfectly responsive. So there's no need to sit cross-legged at all. Any position will do. It's the reflexive map making that is the meditation object we seek to understand. And by understand, I mean stand under. Stand under the map making. If you stand under the map making, you will be free. That is the prison. It's not the economic circumstances. It is not the political system. It is not the environment. It's not gender equality. All of these things need to be fixed. But really, what the prison is reflexive map making. And when we stand under it, we find ourselves free. Then we can decide what to do with our lives. And that, to me, is a huge discovery right in every moment. Doesn't require any special skills, really. It's about learning to do less in a very specific way. And in particular, it's learning not to immediately react. And it's the immediacy of the reaction that's such a problem. Now, we have so many myths and fairy tales about this. For example, in The Lord of the Rings, the King of Rohan is sleeping on his throne, all roomy-eyed, and there's this evil vizier who's running his country for him and weaving all this stuff around him. That's the map maker. That is it. In Aladdin and the 1001 Lights, it's the same thing. The Sultan's asleep and the evil vizier is running the country. We need to awaken, take back the throne of our being, use the map maker as an advisor. Once the map maker becomes an advisor, the map maker becomes a trusted friend, because the map maker contains all you've ever learned, all the good and bad things that ever happened to you, all your opinions, all of it. It's all in there, which means the map maker has a lot of information for you. But if the map maker is in front of you, so you don't see actuality, the map maker is a prison keeper. He's a prison guard. And that's what we need to become free of. And that's why it's so fundamental. And the trouble is, we are educated into the idea that the inferential models of the world that we have developed in our culture are, quote, real. And that we are not. We're just nothing much. We're just onlookers or something. There's such an appallingly bad idea, because it's absolutely the reverse. We are the center of everything, because there is no thing we can experience apart from the map making and what gives rise to it. That is the totality of existence. So the idea that people say, oh, there's a universe out there and I can tell you about it and all that, as if you don't matter, are simply making a complete nonsense when you think about it. So this idea of taking back autonomy, becoming less reactive, means that you become more resilient, more creative, more tolerant, more able to do what you wish, and less influenced by other people and what they have to sell you. And this is a really important skill, as you can imagine. In fact, without it, modernity is becoming increasingly challenging because of all the technological change that's going on.
Wow, I am just digesting all of that. I agree with you. I agree with you, and I think that that's why meditation is truly going to save us.
Yeah, it should save us.
It literally will save us.
Yeah, it's the Asian gift from the ancient traditions, 2,500 years of unbroken lineage, that are coming to save modernity from blowing itself up. And this intuition that modernity is going to blow itself up has been around for a while. And, bringing meditation, Jonas Salk of the Salk Institute, I don't know if you've ever heard of this guy.
No.
He developed penicillin. In the end of his life, he tried to found another institute to precisely introduce non-conceptual clarity, because he felt it was so important for the future of mankind. What's wonderful about the meditation lineages is they contain practical techniques you can actually use. So there are many, many, many people who've had the intuition that somehow there's more to life than just ideas. But to find a way to it, a path, a practice, that's where these unbroken Asian traditions are so valuable. All we have to do is translate them from the Pali, from the Sanskrit, from the Tibetan, from all of their complicated language, deculturize them, so they're not Thai or Burmese or Tibetan or whatever. They come into our contemporary culture and express them clearly. And if we can do that, they will work their magic. And, meeting a meditator like you is to find agreement on this point. Anyone who meditates knows this, because it's so obvious. It's so apparent. The task for us all is to make it clear. And my contract's real simple. I say, look, guys, this book is a contract. I will explain in 4 or 5 pages max, probably 3 actually, what it is I want you to do. Just do it for 3 minutes every day. At the end of 7 days, I'll give you another term I want to explain. And this will build up until eventually you know what meditation is. In fact, you are a meditator. You didn't do it by learning a whole complicated thing and trying to do it and all of that. You just did it step by step by step. It's like a dripping tap. It just gradually fills a bath. And it doesn't take a lot of time. This idea that you've got to meditate for hours is just for monks. Of course, if you're a monk and that's your day job, by all means, meditate for hours. But that isn't the point of meditation. And, there are lots of meditation traditions that actually are 3-minute meditation traditions. They do exist, because an awful lot of people who live in this way realize that once you take time out, once you free your natural intelligence from its shackling by the map making, once you free that, you're done. Then you can rely on your natural intelligence to tell you what to do. There's no need to sit there for hours. Once you unhook the horse, you've unhooked the horse. That's the thing. Now, of course, the horse is going to get tangled up again. You've got to unhook it again and do another little thing. But this is 5 seconds. This is not even 3 minutes. Actually, once you get the taste of meditation, 5 seconds is enough. And what you're trying to do is to keep the horse unhooked. That's really the challenge. And I've met lots of people who say, oh, I'm a meditator. I meditate 6 hours a day. I meditate 8 hours a day. But you feel when they get off their cushion, somehow it's not doing a lot for them. And that's because they're using meditation as a refuge to hide away from the world. Whereas really, we want meditation to help us respond to the world, to be in the world. And it's really interesting. The Tibetan word for compassion, which is what this is, can be actually translated as responsiveness. It's responsiveness is compassion. And it's this idea of being responsive. Now, when you look at a wise person, you say, oh, they're wise. They're wise. What you actually see is someone who, when faced with a problem, doesn't immediately jump out of their skin. They respond very calmly, never flustered, never freaked out. And this capacity to be responsive is such a valuable thing. It's almost beyond value, really, because it's the whole of our experience. So, I feel quite passionately about it. And like you, I think it's come to save us. I think otherwise, insane politicians who really have the mental age of children and who are trapped in reactivity, and they're using reactivity to sell their messages. So a lot of the political discourse is literally using buzzwords to make you react. That, and then, modern weapons. Oh my God, how long have we got? And all of the problems, the environmental and social problems that come about due to this narrowness of view. So to me, this is really something that's got to happen. It's great for me to meditate.
Well, that's why I loved your book so much, because I'm often asked, because I've had a lot of tragedy, loss in my life, and in the last 16 years, I lost my stepdad. I suffered a miscarriage. I went through a divorce, and went through COVID, and I have my own child. I have a 6-year-old, and I'm an entrepreneur, and I have all these different passions, and I'm often asked, how do you get through everything that you've gone through with such grace? And my response is always the same. I meditate, because what has happened with me in meditation is I become less attached to the world outside of me. My reaction and my response is always to go within to solve my problems. And it has always worked for me. And I feel like if people, and that's why this book is so important, because 3 minutes a day is so practical. In our modern day society, we are busier than ever. We are addicted to being productive. We are addicted to consuming. We are addicted to our phones. We are rarely present in the moment. We are literally being enslaved to get out of the moment and to distract us from the present moment. Everything around us is designed to take us out of the present moment. So if we can go, hey, you're stressed? 3 minutes. Just take 3 minutes a day. And yet I do think that why do you think people avoid meditation? Why do you think people avoid 3 minutes a day of just sitting still?
I think there are fundamental misunderstandings about meditation, honestly. I mean, one is I've already mentioned, which is this idea that you've got to do it for hours. Another is this term mindfulness. Now, a lot of people think that mindfulness is about being literally aware of every single thing that's going on around you the whole time. And you're like, I can't miss a thing. I've got to be like that. One of my teachers says it's like being constipated. You're like, oh, This is a total misunderstanding of being full of mind.
Mm.
Full of mind is not that same thing at all. So people think that mindfulness is some microscopic examination of reality or some idea like this. These are really wrong understandings. When you achieve the ability to savor your own state without being reactive, there are two things that happen. The first is you realize you belong. You're actually here. You don't have to do anything to belong. You actually do belong. You belong. You're not here because someone lent you it or something, which is what modernity tries to tell you. If you don't work, you're not worth anything. You know, your sense of self-worth, all this talk is utter nonsense. We belong. And the second thing is this word grace. Now, this word grace is very, I was talking about this with someone this morning. This word grace is fascinating because the grace that's talked about, say, in Christendom, is the understanding beyond concept, the blessing of resting in your own state. That is a state of grace. And that's exactly what meditation brings. I don't have any view about religions. I really don't. People have religious faith, good for them. The meditation will make it richer. That's all. It'll make it deeper. And for those who don't have faith, the meditation will give them grace. And they'll be able to deal with the difficulties that life brings gracefully. And they'll find solutions to them which their reactivity didn't know. Because remember, reactivity comes from the past. It is always reflecting forward what you already know. So as a result, people who are reactive go round and round and round in circles because they're coming from the past. And this circular motion is called samsara. And a lot of people have heard this term, samsara. And what samsara is the inevitable circularity of living reactively. Once you respond, your natural intelligence isn't coming from the past, it's coming from the present. And consequently, it'll see things and say, you know, maybe you should try that. And suddenly you're going in a different direction. And that is grace. And if you think that's a gift of God, great. If you think that's a gift of your innate humanity, great. There's no issue there. The key is that we live gracefully and we take the blessings of grace, which are available to all of us the moment we get off the merry-go-round of reactivity that we're stuck on. And to me, it's such a fundamental thing, this. And, you know, Buddha's first teaching is very interesting. People say, oh, it means, you know, dukkha, suffering. They say all phenomena are suffering. Actually, that's a wrong understanding. Buddha's first teaching was know that phenomena are suffering. Know that phenomena are suffering, i.e., it's about responding to difficulty by knowing it. And when you do that, it's suddenly a lot less difficult. Suddenly, the thing that you thought you couldn't overcome becomes something you can respond to gracefully and in the moment. And you live a better life, and other people see you living a better life, like you more, want to be around you, ask you what you're doing, try to work it all out. All you're doing is stepping back from reactivity, because our innate intelligence is decent, kind, and intuitive. That is our nature. Human beings are like that. There is a lot of empirical evidence that people are basically kind. The problem is our map maker only is interested in bad news. And this is because our map is protective. It's always trying to protect us from things that might happen. So the newspapers are full of bad news, but the millions and millions and millions and millions of examples of good news never get printed. So if you fall over in the street, a total stranger is going to run over and pick you up. That is basic human goodness. That is something we've all experienced. We say, oh, yeah, okay, well, the guy helped me up, you know, so what? Oh, excuse me. That's basic human goodness. And what we are forgetting in our frenetic wish to make more money and do more stuff is this basic fact. We belong. We belong anyway. Whether we do stuff or not, we belong. We weren't born with a debt, with some sort of price tag on our ears saying, first of all, do this, then you belong, or something. We belong. And it's in that belonging that we find what we're looking for, which is the ability to step away from things that stress us and choose our own life, whatever that is going to be. And, I'm not suggesting there are not bad things in the world. I'm not suggesting there aren't things that need fixing. I'm not even suggesting there are not people who do evil things. All I am saying is we're going to do better by being able to respond properly rather than merely react to whatever it is. And that, to me, is the fundamental life skill. And once we have that, then we can get on and do what we're going to do. That's fine. But getting there is the key. And I don't care what skill set someone has, whether it's a sportsman, a philosopher, a writer, a businessman, it doesn't matter. Meditation's going to make it better.
I completely agree with you. I'm just sitting here. I just really just taking everything in because I think it's so valuable, especially for people that are very overwhelmed by their emotions. And I wanted you to speak to that because there's two things that you talked about in your book that I really want to talk about. One, you talked about dullness.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, how do we experience dullness in our lives? And how does meditation help us connect to joy?
Okay. So let's just talk about this map a bit more. Remember I said it was a map of associations. The associations trigger emotion. So if you don't name things, there's no place for the emotions to attach to. So for example, I'm a man, I get road rage. Not much now. I used to get a lot more. We're sitting in the car, someone cuts in front of you, and you're a bad driver. Yeah. That label, bad driver, triggers the road rage. That's what triggers it. If you just see a car cut in front of you without the label, okay, a car cut in front of me, there's no emotional trigger. So a lot of the triggering that people are suffering from is due to reactivity from the label itself. It's what the map tells you to do. The moment you get beneath the map, it all changes. Now, we have in our common language an amazing clue. We talk about recognition. We say, oh, I recognize you. I've met you before. Recognition. Actually, there's cognition and recognition. Oh, so interesting. The map is a recognitive map full of names and injunctions and things you know and things you don't and people you've met and people you haven't, and all that. Now, as we disconnect from it, as we learn to become separated from our recognitive, reflexive reactivity, there are 5 things that happen. They're called the 5 obstacles. Now, this is an ancient idea that goes back right to the time of the Buddha, if not before, 2,500 years ago. Amazingly, they're still totally valid today. Now, these 5 features are all features of disconnecting from a protective mechanism, a map maker that thinks it's helping you the whole time, even if it really isn't always helping you. Sometimes it is, but not always. But when you try and disconnect, this overprotective auntie has got 5 things auntie's going to do. The first one is we're going to fantasize about things we want. Oh, I wish I had one of those. We find ourselves running off on a magic carpet of what I want. Or we might fantasize about what I've got to do. I must stop doing that, or I must never go there again, or this was so bad. These are 2, aversion and attraction. The second 2 are interesting, and you mentioned one. It's irritability and dullness. Now, irritability is what a beginning meditator always sees immediately, which is you see all this noise, this churning, kind of endless internal commentary. And often beginning meditators say, oh, I had to stop because I was getting more nervous because I suddenly started hearing all this noise. I prefer not to look, because it's too noisy. Irritability. The reverse is dullness. Now, dullness is really interesting. because the map wants to guide us. If we disconnect from it, it says, okay, shut down. The guy's not interested, shut down. And we find ourselves going to sleep. And this is because we're so used to being guided around by this shiny thing telling us what to do, that when we try and disconnect, we just go straight to sleep. Now, the trick to overcome dullness is to just go to sleep. It's a bit like judo. If you just roll with it and go to sleep, in no time, you wake up again and you're clear. And you think, oh, this is just a game. This is a go to sleep game where the map maker says, okay, put him to sleep, not looking anymore. No, you're done with this. And you just simply go, it's okay, I'll sleep. And you wake up again. And you find that dullness, when you are aware of dullness, it ceases to be dull. Dullness is a function of the map maker shutting down. And it leads to the fifth, which is doubt. The voice of reason that says, why are you doing this? I've guided you your whole life. I've got you to where you are now. You've had successes, you've had failures, but nonetheless, you're still alive. All this very reasonable talk gets triggered when you step aside from the map maker. And this fifth one is ultimately the biggest. That's the one that will try and stop you meditating. That's why 3 minutes is great, because you just say, hey, it's only 3 minutes. Relax, only 3 minutes. And that little negotiation is required. And the reason for it is this. We aren't very reliable. Most people, honestly, if you can imagine what the map maker sees, the map maker has seen you every day of your life since you were born. All those little white lies, all those little things you did you're a little embarrassed about, all those promises you didn't keep, all of that, seeing the lot, clocking it all. And consequently, it's saying, I can't rely on this person. This person's not totally reliable. I need to get in front of their actions and tell them what to do. As you begin to develop a meditation practice, there's a very interesting negotiation that begins to happen. You find yourself, it's almost as if you're talking to someone else. You aren't, you're talking to part of yourself. But you're saying, look, I decided to do this. I'm mature, I'm grown up. Don't worry, I'm not going to jump off a cliff. I'm just going to allow myself to experience the world without judgment. And then by all means, tell me whether I'm right or wrong. I'm not trying to get rid of you altogether. There was a big mistake the hippies made. And people who often take psychedelics make this mistake even today. They think, oh, I'll just blow it up. I'm just kind of, blow my mind and then somehow I'll be free. Not true. If you try to blow your mind, all that will happen is the map maker will come back 100% stronger, saying, you tried to blow your mind. Geez, I'm really not going to let you off the hook. It may take it time, it'll get back. And so this idea that we can just blow our way to freedom is a nonsense. What we do is negotiate. And this is why it becomes ultimately a sober thing. Meditation is a sober relationship one develops with one's own experience. I like to say you become a craftsman of your own experience, like someone who's a beautiful furniture maker or violin maker or something. You learn to look at the world as a gift, and your perception of the world is your offering. And you're no longer just naming as if that's enough. Like you sit in front of a beautiful sunset and go, oh, that's a beautiful sunset. It's so annoying, that reflexive naming. It's the ability to just be there because you belong. You really do. We belong here. This is our home. And being a human being is a compliment. Remember, the American Indians used to give that as a compliment. They would say, when they met people who were behaving properly, say, you are a human being. And unfortunately, many of us are not. We're just reacting to a map in terms of what we're going to get, what we want to avoid, what we think is good, what we think is bad, all this judgment. And this isn't a happy life. It may be a, quote, successful life, but it won't be a happy life. And so to me, again, finding that ground and living in the grace of being who you are right now without, oh, I've got to be mindful of every moment, or without trying to stop thoughts, just be here and respond appropriately. And what will happen is you'll be guided. Your natural intelligence guides you. You'll be told, oh, this is interesting. Look at that. You'll have intuitions. Intuition, another very interesting word. Intuition. You get tuition free from your own intelligence. Intuition. You get, maybe I should do that. Things, attract you. You just find yourself in a much, much bigger world. And the amazing thing is it gets bigger and bigger and bigger as we suddenly realize our reflexivity was quite literally trapping us in this tiny little narrow slice of what it means to be human. And we could open it and open it and open it and open it. And there is so much magic and so much meaning, so much beauty, so much color, so much interactiveness in this incredible, beautiful world that we have the privilege to belong to. We are also beautiful, beautiful things. I remember Walt Whitman. There's the American tradition of this is the transcendentalist tradition, where again, they had an intuition of the non-dual. Walt Whitman, wonderful quote, "A friend is the greatest wonder of nature." I think actually the quote is that a true friend is the greatest wonder of nature. So beautiful. Just engaged, responsive, intelligent, not trapped by reactivity. There is a skill. It can be learned. It is not something we just have to get from a book and get it right. We can learn how to do this. There are techniques. And so the meditation techniques are a huge gift. And it's a technology that they developed in these Asian traditions, which is still with us. We're incredibly blessed to have unbroken lineages that go back, all the way back. And so we can take this technology and apply it in our current circumstance.
So beautifully said, Richard. I completely agree. I think that just to repeat what I said earlier, I think meditation is what is going to save us. I think everybody needs to get your book, 3 Minutes a Day. Where could they get your book?
Well, they can get my book on Amazon. You can get my book at Barnes & Noble. You can get my book in Indie. Or you can go on my website, which is my name, literally, Richard Dixey. By the way, I'm a Dixey, not an IE. Dixey, richarddixey.com. And there again, they're ordering places there. So there's lots of places to get it. And it's in bookshops here and there. It's beginning to spread now. And I hope it does. I mean, I'm not in this to become a famous guy. I'm not in this for the money. In fact, I donated all the profits to the college I teach in. I really want people to meditate. That's all I want. I just want normal people to meditate. Great if meditators meditate. That's fantastic. I want normal people to meditate. The kind of people who say, well, it's not for me. I want them to meditate. And, we teach classes. I'm dean of Dharma College, which is in Berkeley, which is dedicated to this very thing of trying to bring these ancient traditions into contemporary language. That's what we do at Dharma College. That's Dharma-College, Dharma-college.com. And that's in the back cover of the book. But nonetheless, really what I'm in this for is to get ordinary folk to meditate. It's a bit like saying, you know how to walk? Do you know how to meditate? Should be like that. It's like, you know how to walk, don't you? Well, are you also meditating? It's so fundamental to life. It's a basic life skill. Yet the meaning it brings it's beyond words, quite literally, because meditation sees words. Meditators see words. Therefore, it is beyond them. They're finally free of being bewitched by language, as if all we have is words. Suddenly, no. Words are a tool. I can see the tool, but I'm not bewitched by the tool. What's the old statement? If all you have is a hammer, all you see is nails. And if all you have is words, all you see is concepts. Once you see words, you see actuality. Actuality is always beyond words. The simplest thing, I began with this, a piece of chocolate is beyond words. There are no words that tell you what chocolate tastes like. Actually, there are no words for any experience that you have. They are all experience is beyond language. All language does is point and say, it was a beautiful sunset. You're pointing at the sunset, but that isn't the sunset. That's just pointing. All words do is designate. And this recognition is really, really important. You suddenly realize, wow, so my actual experience is always beyond words, always. All I do is name it so I can tell other people, go look there. But what they're looking at is also beyond words. All the words are doing is giving them a direction to go look. That's all words do. But if we're trapped by words into thinking that words are reality, if we get trapped like that, we literally impoverish ourselves down to a tiny sliver, as I said. And that's a tragedy. That really is. And yet our modern education systems are designed to do just that. And indeed, our media and what's on the mobile phones and all the rest of it, designed to do that. ChatGPT, it's a word engine designed to do that. We are surrounded by technologies designed to capture our natural intelligence. And I want to set it free. Really, I sincerely mean this. I want to set it free. And I think meditation will do it. And I think 3 minutes a day will do it. It's not a lot. You just got to do the right thing. That's all. And if you do it, boy, you're free.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, just with the word meaningful, I think once I began meditating and made it a consistent habit of mine, every moment became full of meaning. I was able to connect to just the fullness of a moment, and that's what creates so much joy in my life. I mean, I really do feel joy 95% of my day, and I'm a recovering alcoholic. Like, what?
I didn't mention joy. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Why does this bring joy? Because it's our human nature to be happy.
Right. I love that. Yeah.
I remember when I first went to India. I went to India when I was young, and it was in the 1970s. And I remember there were these beggars. They were outside some office building somewhere in downtown Pondicherry, it was actually. And they were, and so, I gave them some money, walked around the corner. Then I forgot something, and I had to come back. There they were laughing away, having a great time. I said, wow, I'm getting fooled here. Our basic nature. Look, show me an unhappy baby, really, honestly. It's like, that's what we are. We're naturally joyful.
Yeah.
We lose our joy because we put it in a box. That's the tragedy of what happens to us. You go to school as a joyful little toddler. You come out of school as a completely alienated teenager. What happened in between? This happened. A whole bunch of indoctrination. Now, education is great. I have got a master's degree. I've got an MSc and a PhD. So I am a heavily educated guy. I believe in education, but I also believe in contextualizing education. That's to say, working out what it's for and not thinking that education makes the world, because it doesn't. Educated people have insights that they can point others toward. But the idea they have insights others can't achieve isn't true. That, again, is problematic. When educated people use complicated language and try to dress everything up in sort of technical language, they're just putting up a smokescreen, honestly. Every idea is simple. And the great tyros that you hear about, like the Einsteins and the Stephen Hawkins and all these people, the Stephen Weinbergs in the scientific world, or the great poets or whatever, they all put it simply. Our natural intelligence is direct. Now, when a 4-year-old looks you in the eye and says, "Daddy, why do you do that?" and points to some embarrassing thing you think you've hidden from the 4-year-old, that's the natural intelligence, immediately able to see exactly where you're lying, exactly where you're trying to hide things. We all have that capacity. It's an innate part of our human nature. So we're naturally happy. We're naturally joyful. There's an amazing book. It's called A Paradise Built in Hell. And it's written by a journalist about what happens after natural disasters. So the biggest section of the book is about the 1908 earthquake in San Francisco, where a lot of the city was burnt. There was no water, there was no heat, there was no electricity, there was nothing. People spontaneously organized into a utopia. There were schools, there were hospitals, there was free food, there was a completely peaceful society. About a week later, the army came and said, this is disorder, and instituted a police force and this and that and the other thing. But in the absolute disaster of a natural tragedy, people's common humanity manifests, because that's where there's nothing else. Now, again, I'm not suggesting we shouldn't have government. I am not. And I'm not suggesting we shouldn't have a police force. I am not. I'm not suggesting any of that. I'm just saying our innate nature is good. And meditation takes you closer. And the really good meditators are in their nature. And they're kind and decent and insightful. They're not all uptight and dominating and trying to get something out of you. What is the point? Suddenly, as a meditator, you're like, why bother to try to manipulate people? What are you going to get from it that you don't already have? And this realization of the wealth of your own nature, the wealth you already have, is astonishing. When you suddenly go, wow, I am blessed with this body. I'm blessed with these faculties. I have so much capacity. I just have to let it free. Allow my map maker to advise me like a trusted friend. That's the proper way to live. And doing that, you become responsive and kind.
I love that. The wealth of your own nature. Well, Richard, I so enjoyed my time with you. I so enjoyed connecting with you and hearing your intelligence about meditation. You have such a soothing way of articulating what you have to say. So thank you for making the time. And thank you for staying committed to this interview, as I know I've had to reschedule like 3 times. I'm so sorry about that. But I really want everyone to get this book, 3 Minutes a Day by Richard Dixey, a 14-week course to learn meditation and transform your life. And I promise you, you will get so much out of it. Each chapter is filled with so many practical techniques that can immediately start creating transformation and change in your life. And it's simple. And it's only 3 minutes. It's only 3 minutes. So I don't care how busy you are. It's only 3 minutes. You are able to create 3 minutes. I don't care who you are. So do it, because as we change one individual at a time, like that's how our society changes. And I really feel like we need that right now. So thank you again, Richard. I really appreciate you.
Thank you too. That was a wonderful interview. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And thank you for everyone for listening to the Got Mental Health podcast. I will talk with you soon. Bye.